Are you ready? Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We always start off the meeting with if anyone has any comments on any of the resolutions that weren't subject to public hearings. Okay, good. Kevin, just so you know, we usually hide the videos of everyone during the meeting, except for the hearings. Yeah, except for the hearings, and people can turn their videos on in case they don't know how to raise their hands through the Zoom system. And that way, and make sure everyone's muted until that time as well. All right, Amber, do we have any correspondence?
So resignation letter from Emma Kraft. I am writing to inform you of my resignation as the Fit Center manager for the town of Shelter Island, effective Friday, August 16th, 2024. I am incredibly grateful for my time on Shelter Island and for the opportunities I have been given in this position. My decision to leave was difficult, but I feel that I will carry so much of what I have learned here from you with me through my next career. This place and this community will always take up a big place in my heart. Please let me know how I'm able to assist you during this time of transition. Thank you again for understanding and support.
All right, Albert, do you want to get us started off? Saying there's some interference in the audio. Oh, okay. I don't even see him. I just texted her, I said, what does it sound like? This is like diagnosing a car, right? Mm-hmm.
Stephen, is it still happening?
On my end, I don't know if anybody else in Zoom world hears it as well.
Darren is having a problem too.
It's a cracking noise. Why don't we do this? Sometimes we just restart the Zoom. What do you think, Kevin? You're the tech.
Yes, turn white.
How's that? Are you still getting a crackly noise?
No, much better.
Much better? Okay. Okay, good. Thanks, Christina. Kevin, to the rest of you. Okay. All right, we still have a couple videos on, Kevin, if you can.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right. You can get us started, Albert.
Right. Be resolved, excuse me, that the town board of the town of Shelter Island hereby calls a public hearing to be held on the 16th day of September 2024 at 6 p.m. prevailing time at Town of Shelter Island Town Hall, 38 North Ferry Road, Shelter Island, New York, 11964, regarding the granting of a cable television franchise renewal agreement by and between the Town of Shelter Island and Suffolk Cable of Shelter Island Incorporated. And be it further resolved, a copy of the cable television franchise agreement is available for public inspection during normal business hours at Shelter Island Town Hall at 38 North Ferry Road, Shelter Island, New York, 11964. At such public hearing, all persons will be given an opportunity to be heard. Written and oral statements will be taken at that time. Time limitations may be imposed for each oral statement as necessary. So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Whereas the Shelter Island Yacht Club, 11 Cheapwood Avenue, has petitioned the town of Shelter Island for permission to perform a maintenance dredge of 20 feet by 60 feet and 10 feet by 90 feet area adjacent to the existing bulkhead, totaling 2,100 square feet to a maximum depth of -6 feet mean low water, and barge approximately 95 cubic yards of sand spoil to an approved upland location as depicted on the project plan prepared by N Consultants dated January 19th, 2024. Now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to section 53-9 of the Code of the Town of Shelter Island, a public hearing will be held at 6:02 prevailing time on the 16th day of September, 2024, in the Shelter Island Town Hall for all interested persons to be heard in favor of or in opposition to the proposed construction. So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Motion carried. Whereas David Hoffman, 40 South Midway Road, has petitioned the town of Shelter Island for permission to install a mooring at a location designated as latitude 41.05781 degrees north and longitude 72.340621 degrees west. Now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to section 90-5 of the Code of the Town of Shelter Island, a public hearing will be held at 6:04 p.m. prevailing time on the 16th day of September 2024 in the Shelter Island Town Hall, Shelter Island, New York, for all interested persons to be heard in favor of or in opposition to the proposed installation. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Whereas Christina Lang and Mark Burgess of 82 Smith Street have petitioned the town of Shelter Island for permission to install a mooring at a location designated as latitude 41.05412 degrees north and longitude 72.35637 degrees west. Now therefore, be it resolved that pursuant to section 90-5 of the Code of the Town of Shelter Island, a public hearing will be held at 6:05 p.m. prevailing time on the 16th day of September 2024 in the Shelter Island Town Hall, Shelter Island, New York, for all interested persons to be heard in favor of or in opposition to the proposed installation. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Whereas Bradley and Margaret Tolkien, 6 Charlie's Lane, have requested to extend permit number 3743, issued August 8th, 2023, to perform a maintenance dredge of 1,424 square foot area to 4 foot below mean water, remove approximately 120 cubic yards of material, and all dredge spoils to be removed off-site to an approved location, per plans prepared by Costello Marine, last revised May 24, 2023. Now therefore be it resolved pursuant to section 53-9 of the Code of the Town of Shelter Island, the town board does hereby approve said request. So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
I'm recusing myself from the next three.
Yep.
One corner.
Whereas Jennifer Rohrer has applied for a rebate from the town of Shelter Island under Chapter 88 of the Shelter Island Town Code to install a low nitrogen sanitary system for property located at 56 Lake Drive, Shelter Island, New York. And whereas the Water Quality Improvement Advisory Board has reviewed the project and recommended a conditional rebate of up to $16,000 be awarded. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board hereby adopts the findings of the WQIAB and approves the applicant for a conditional rebate of up to $16,000 in eligible costs on completion of the project and subject to the applicant's compliance with and completion of all terms and conditions of the conditional rebate agreement. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution shall be given to the Water Quality Improvement Advisory Board and the Building Department. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Whereas
Oh,
Josh.
abstentions?
Whereas Joshua and Kate Gardner have applied for a rebate from the town of Shelter Island under chapter 88 of the Shelter Island Town Code to install a low nitrogen sanitary system for property located at 4 North Silver Beach Road, Shelter Island, New York. And whereas the Water Quality Improvement Advisory Board has reviewed the project and recommended a conditional rebate of up to $16,000 be awarded. Now therefore, be it resolved that the town board hereby adopts the findings of the WQIAB and approve the applicant for a conditional rebate of up to $16,000 in eligible costs upon completion of the project and subject to the applicant's compliance with and completion of all terms and conditions of the conditional rebate agreement. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution shall be given to the Water Quality Improvement Advisory Board and the Building Department. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Fellow signs.
Be resolved by the town board of the town of Shelter Island that the low nitrogen sanitary system rebate previously authorized on January 22, 2024 per resolution number 70 to Michael Scaraglino for $16,000 is adjusted to $12,000 for the basic rebate and $5,000 for a pressurized shallow drain field. So move.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Abstentions? Motion carried.
Be it resolved by the town board of the town of Shelter Island that local law number 8-2024, previously adopted on June 3rd, 2024, per resolution number 218, is hereby amended to be listed as local law number 13-2024.
So moved. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Whereas the Deer and Tick Committee of the Town of Shelter Island have presented the town board with the mission statement of said committee, and whereas the town board has reviewed this mission statement, now therefore be it resolved that the mission statement provided by the Deer and Tick Committee is hereby approved. Shelter Island Deer and Tick Committee mission statement: to advise the Shelter Island Town Board in measures deemed socially acceptable, environmentally sound, and fiscally responsible in managing, monitoring, and maintaining the deer and tick populations as low as possible in an effort to decrease the risk and incidence of tick-borne diseases on Shelter Island. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion
Whereas Elizabeth Gale, on behalf of the Shelter Island Lions Club, has submitted an outdoor assembly application for permission to hold the annual Snapper Derby at 40 North Ferry Road from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. on August 31st, 2024. And whereas the required documents have been submitted, now therefore be it resolved, said request is hereby approved. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Whereas Adrian Angelvi, on behalf of the Beach House LLC, has submitted an outdoor assembly application for permission to hold a private charity event for the Shelter Island Lions Club to be held at 35 Shore Road on the 28th day of August, 2024, between the hours of 9 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. And whereas the applicant is requesting an exemption from the noise ordinance, and whereas the requested documents have been submitted, now therefore be it resolved, said request is hereby approved. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Be it resolved that Michelle Donahue is hereby appointed to serve as on-call as-needed home-delivered meals only driver for the Senior Center Nutrition Program for the year of 2024 at the rate of $28.85 per hour effective August 26th, 2024. So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Be it resolved that Lori DePoto is hereby appointed to serve as on-call as-needed driver for the senior center at the rate of $24.19 per hour, retroactive to August 12, 2024, and as a CDL driver for the senior center at the rate of $30 per hour, effective August 26, 2024. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Whereas Patricia Castaldi was appointed to serve as part-time deputy town assessor for 20 hours per week. Now therefore be it resolved that said hours are hereby amended to be set at 25 hours per week, effective September 2nd, 2024. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Be it resolved that Kelsey Legnansky is hereby appointed to serve as interim fit manager for the Recreation Department at the rate of $31.25 per hour, effective August 26, 2024. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Whereas in connection with the Nelson C. White Major Subdivision, Suffolk County Tax Map Number 700-22-2-1, 2, 3, 5.2, 5.3, 5.6, and 5.7, there was a performance bond posted by the subdivider on December 28, 2021 pursuant to Section 111-22 of the Town Code of the Town of Shelter Island. Whereas the work associated with said bond consisted of the initial construction of Artist Lane, and whereas said work was completed as per a letter dated May 24th, 2024 from the Planning Board, and now therefore be it resolved that such bond is now therefore released, subject to the furnishing of and acceptance by the Town Board of a maintenance bond pursuant to the terms of Section 111-24A. So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Be it resolved that the supervisor is hereby authorized and directed to deposit the sum of $14.84 from the LGE Coffee Bean for reimbursement to Police Department General Ledger Account A3120.484 for sales tax charged and paid via JP Morgan Commercial Card Solutions for Marine Patrol Food for the fireworks on July 13, 2024. Sales tax was not paid via vouchers, and the vendor has issued a check to the Town of Shelter Island as a refund. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Be it resolved that the supervisor is hereby authorized and directed to deposit the sum of $6,000 from the Senior Citizens Foundation of Shelter Island, Inc. and an increase to A2705N nutrition donations, and increase to A6772-400 nutrition food. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
There's a series of financial transfers, be the following budget transfers are hereby approved. There's 19, I believe, that a copy will be available at the clerk's office, town clerk's office. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Discussion.
Okay.
The 9,643 contingency to the fit equipment, that's from the contingency fund?
That's to IT equipment. And what that was is last year, there were some purchases made, and there was, it should have come out of the 2023 budget, and it just got picked up as a 2024 expenditure. So the money from 2023 went back into the fund balance. So it's sitting there. And so we're taking it out of contingency because we have to use contingency first. But it was supposed to be in last year. And so the purchase order had 2024 on it, but the actual invoice was 2023.
But it's a push between 23 and this year, okay.
Yes.
The other one I just had a question on was the contingent for the planning board professional services, 8,000.
Yeah, we did a guesstimate last year when we did the budget as to how much legal fees we need to incur when wetlands got moved over to the planning board.
Okay,
And so it's been higher, so we need to pull from the
okay.
contingency there to cover.
So that's
this.
going to be an increase moving forward now for that.
No, because we've taken back wetlands, so as soon as they wrap up
Okay.
the last their
All
wetlands
right.
applications, it's back
Okay.
on town.
All right, good.
One other question. The 13 transactions in the middle here that are marked as from and to,
Mhm. Those are mostly highway generated, so it's just little bits and pieces between like some office expenditures and miscellaneous. I guess I'll make sure Shelby Amber gets you all of the.
These are highways coming from equipment and office and back and forth.
Yes, although I think 1490 might be,
I mean,
I
it's
thought there was some public works in there.
Yeah, and public works.
Yeah, I went through and checked them all and made an adjustment.
okay. Well, yeah, but it's about $3,000, but we should know where they're coming from and going to, just so
I
we
reviewed
talked about that.
I reviewed all of them last Thursday.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion carried.
Be resolved that the 2024 general claims numbered 1512 through 1664 in the amount of $204,548.78. 2024 highway claims numbered 194 through 213 in the amount of $15,473.45. And the 2024 Community Preservation Fund claims number 15 through 16 in the amount of $9,883.11 are hereby approved for payment as audited, and the supervisor and/or any town board member is hereby authorized and directed to sign the approval for payment of the same. So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay. That we will now adjourn the regular part of the meeting and move into a series of public hearings. All right, the first public hearing is on the application of Robert and Elizabeth Jeffrey. So, read the notice.
6:02 PM prevailing time on the application of Robert and Elizabeth Jeffey, 17 Westmoreland Drive, to remove and replace in place approximately 116 linear feet of existing timber bulkhead with vinyl bulkhead and backfill with up to 25 cubic yards of clean sand.
Do we have a report from the Waterways Committee?
What the WFAC voted down in a 6-0 to approve.
We'll now open the hearing, and I see Mr. Herman, you're here to represent the applicant.
Yes, evening, everyone. Rob Herman, Van Consultants, on behalf of the applicant. This is a straightforward bulkhead replacement application. It's actually a continuation of bulkheading. The town board recently approved on adjacent property. It's here as a separate application because this section of bulkheading is on a separate parcel. We did meet with the WMAC and the application is submitted. If the board has any questions, I can answer them.
One thing that struck me is the total cost of work is noted as $35,000, but for 16 linear feet seems like a lot. But I guess our application fees aren't based on costs of the building department.
Yeah, I can't speak to the cost. We would have gotten the estimated costs from a contractor.
Anybody at the table have any questions?
Nope.
Is there anyone in the public who has anything? Anyone on Zoom? Okay. Then we will have a motion to close the hearing. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
The next public hearing is on the application of Mark Kasmerick. Sorry, I'm saying that wrong.
6:06 PM prevailing time on the application of Mary Kasmerick, 137 Ram Island Drive, to remove and replace in place approximately 140 linear feet of existing timber bulkhead with vinyl bulkhead, backfill with approximately 75 cubic yards of clean sandy fill to be trucked in from an upland approved source, remove and replace in-kind in place existing 3.5 foot by 9 foot wood stuff.
Do we have a report from the Waterways?
The report from the Waterways is that the WMAC unanimously approved this application, 6-0.
Open hearing.
And Rob Herman of Van Consultants on behalf of the applicant, Mary Kasmerick. Ms. Kasmerick is also here. Again, another straightforward bulkhead replacement application. If you have any questions, I can answer.
No questions.
I don't have any questions.
I'm making notes. No, I'm good.
Has this bulkhead previously washed out? Is that why there's like a significant grade change?
So during, and Ms. Kasmerick can speak to it if she wishes, but the short answer to the question is the bulkhead did get cracked this past winter. And so right kind of in the center, there's just enough gap that material has been coming out. And I can attest that she's been quite anxious to get it fully permitted so the work can be done.
All right, when you replace, are you gonna fill that back in so it's level?
Yeah, so the backfill is part of the application, the bulkhead.
It washed out April 4th, I moved as quickly as possible to have it repaired with Brad's help.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this? Anyone in the Zoom audience? I'll make a motion to close that public hearing.
Second?
All in favor? The last in the series of waterways is the application of Bruce Wolosoff and Margaret Garrett.
At 6:08 PM prevailing time on the application of Bruce Wolosoff and Margaret Garrett, 60 Peconic Avenue, I petition the town of Shelter Island for permission to install approximately 19 linear feet of 500 to 1,500 pound armor stone landward of existing bulkhead return, renew approximately 180 square feet area of eroding bank with approximately 10 cubic yards of clean sand to be trucked in from an improved upland source and planted with Cape American beach grass.
And we have waterways report?
Yes, sorry. This application also was unanimously approved by the WMAC 6-0.
Okay. We'll open this up.
Bob Herman, Event Consultants, on behalf of the applicants. This is a situation where there is erosion that has been occurring around the north and east end of an existing bulkhead return. As it was initially conceived, there would have been just a linear extension of the existing bulkhead return that is there. The New York State DEC asked that instead armor stone be used as lower and more profiled structure. It would also be better at dissipating wave energy and hopefully avoiding just pushing the problem closer to Peconic Avenue. So we revised the plans accordingly. The WMAC seemed to be very supportive of that approach. And so now we're in front of the board seeking approval for that plan. If you have any other questions, I'm happy to answer them. This picture is submitted with the application that show the erosional area. They should speak for themselves.
Is it erosion is occurring from rains and things like that, or?
This is something that's going to happen during more evulsive storm events. The material is basically being pulled out, not just from behind the return, I should say not just landward of the return, but actually starting to get sucked out from behind the return, which is putting the return in jeopardy. So the stone would extend the return, and then the area both behind the stone and in the void at the north end of the existing bulkhead return would all be backfilled and then renourished with beach grass. So basically, they would just look to stabilize and then naturally revegetate the area that's currently scoured out.
I noticed that the stone is going in just a straight line back following the current bulkhead. Is there any benefit to adding a couple on the end that kind of make it so it's not such a hard stop? That way you don't get the same thing happening deep in.
Well, what ends up happening with that is that the DDC really wants the structure to be minimized. That's the idea of the armor stone, is basically just the fact that unlike a vertically faced wall, that energy should not be shooting up and down and refracting around, but getting dissipated. Otherwise, you'd be running it then parallel with the beach, and that's a naturally vegetated area there. And so, unfortunately, you see generally with these plans is a little more reactive than prophylactic because they're trying to minimize the amount of structure that's on the beach.
Okay, that makes sense.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the physical audience who has any questions? How about the Zoom audience? Make a motion that we close that public hearing. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
So now we will move on to reconvening the public hearing on the Karen Purer dock application. I presume that the reports were read last meeting. just today received.
I was saying, we got it online.
Yes. Give a minute for those to get passed out. So since we received them so late in the day, I do not believe that they were timely enough to get posted on the town website.
It is posted.
It is, thank you, thank you. Okay, so
Rob Herman, Event Consultants, on behalf of the applicant. This is a reconvening, as you mentioned, of the hearing weeks ago, which was all but closed, except for the fact that I believe the board and also town attorney had asked that we provide a plan that presented in writing all of the mitigation and compliance with the WMAC requests that had been discussed at the hearing. And so we did ask the surveyor to update the map with those proposed conditions. They were all discussed at the last hearing, but just to quickly walk through them, the labels for each of the following were added to the survey. One, simply noting that the previously existing ramp would be reinstalled. The existing float would be chalked pursuant to New York State DEC's requirements. And then also pursuant to the WMAC recommendation, the existing treated wood pile supporting the catwalk below mean high water would be replaced with untreated wood pilings. Also pursuant to the WMAC recommendation, all of the existing wood decking on the catwalk would be replaced with open grate decking, which, as we talked about at the last hearing, is the light permeable decking that allows the wetland vegetation to grow beneath it. And as we had suggested, in addition to those modifications, that we would remove most of what is labeled on the survey as the existing walk-on grade. There was some discussion, I believe, with the town attorney. I mentioned that we would be able to quantify that, and I was asked to quantify that on paper. And so the note that the label that has been added is the most landward 20 feet of what is shown as that existing walkway on grade is 24 feet. And the reason that I wanted to go double check that and show that on the plan is because where the surveyor shows that line between the ramp and the walk-on grade is not really an exact line. Basically, the ramp comes down, there's a little bit of an angle to it, and then at some point, the structure actually gets over what is dry lawn now, and then all of the additional walk-on grade is basically superfluous structure. There's really no need to have it. And so I had promised that I would go out to the site, I would verify what that distance was. I think I had testified that I thought it was around 20 feet. It was. So basically, the most landward 20 feet would be removed, meaning at that point, really, the only part of the unelevated catwalk would be that section that you need to get up to the elevated portion of the catwalk from the dry lawn. Otherwise, the structure would be ending basically where there's a low spot, and you'd be stepping down basically right at where right by where that wetland edge is. You'd be disturbing that area, and so this just allows that the entire vegetated wetland itself to be cleared by the structure. Overall, the structure ends up being about 7 feet longer on the landward side than the structure that had been repaired and replaced. And part of that, I think, if you just look at the survey from 2018 that I submitted at the prior hearing compared to this one, wetlands have migrated a bit toward the house. And so basically, this is really just, it's really just to continue that structural point of access so that you're not trampling the wetland itself. Again, the seaward side of the dock has remained unchanged. And that was really it. That was the request, and the hearing was left open so that we would have an opportunity basically to present to you in writing the exact things we discussed at the last hearing, and verifying the exact linear footage of that walk-on grade to be, to be permanently removed.
And just to confirm, because it's not marked on this set of drawings, how wide is the dock?
So the dock is still 5 feet wide. I think there is a number there, Amber, if you look just to the left of the ramp, I think there's, oh no, I'm sorry, that's an elevation. Yeah, there, on the prior survey, there was, that's an elevation. It should be 5 feet.
Yeah.
And we discussed at the last hearing the fact that the original permit was 4 feet, but in fact it was constructed at 5 feet. And it was thus repaired and replaced at 5 feet. So that would remain, that was one element that without ripping the entire structure out and rebuilding it again, would not be in compliance with the originally issued permit. But we also talked about the fact that one element that was not available at the time of the originally issued permit was the open grade decking. So it does remain an elevated catwalk, and all of the originally permitted wood decking and still existing wood decking would all be removed and replaced with the permeable open grade decking. So that was, which was one of the reasons I believe that the WMAC had come to that recommendation. Yes. We covered a little bit of this ground a few weeks ago, but I'm just
Yep.
refreshing.
Since it wasn't marked on this drawing, I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah.
And then I didn't see any new construction drawings with this one. Presumably they're the same as the original application.
No, so the original, so what you're describing in the construction drawings, I assume you're talking about the schematic drawings that had like not just the overhead, but the profile view. So as we had talked about at the last hearing, one, I didn't know, since the dock is there, if we're actually in need of providing that again, because we're really providing something that's not really proposed, but basically what's there except for these changes. I mean, they could be additionally showed in profile view if you want. But one of the things we talked about at the last hearing is we were looking to get some guidance from the board that in fact, if there is some agreement that these are the WMAC, the DEC, and my recommendation to get rid of that 20 feet of walk, if that was something that the board was going to find an acceptable means of finally bringing this matter to a close and moving it toward a permit issuance, if you needed us to also provide that additional section, we could do that. But it did seem a little bit tenuous to go ahead and provide that whole section and then have the possibility of you saying, well, we actually don't like this, we want you to do something else. Now, the idea here is to get this resolved once and for all, and really in the most, at this point, I think for all of our sakes, the most efficient way possible. So if the board felt it was necessary as a condition of approval to also show what's shown in plan view and profile view, we can certainly provide that. But it really would just be showing the same labels that are shown on the survey.
Let me hold that thought and continue with any other questions and then come back to it.
Sounds good.
Is there going to be water or electric on the dock? Or benches? Because in the application, there's a not for construction drawing that shows benches, a hose bib, and electric stub out.
That I'm not aware of. I believe Mrs. Fuhr may be on Zoom, so you could ask her that question. I don't think at this point we would be adding any benches, like any structural elements, because that would require also going back to the DEC.
So I'm checking.
The water and electricity is sort of a standard with the DEC, but if it keeps things simpler and easier to not pursue that right now, I think they'd be happy to not pursue it. But I don't want to, I don't want to conjecture, especially if Mrs. Spears on Zoom and she can answer that question herself.
Okay. And then it's just this random page. I'm not sure if it's intended for this application, but it also shows lighting, typical deck lighting.
Which I assume is what would be associated with electricity. So again, I would just ask that question to Ms. Fury. The board
Robert,
is-
it's Stacy Aaron. I'm Karen Foyer's attorney. I can answer the question regarding your electricity. There's already lights, on the dock. They exist now. There's already electricity there, has been there prior to them actually closing on the property. So it is in existence. There is electricity there already.
What about water?
As for the water hose, Karen, I think you can answer that question.
There was both, hi, everyone. There was both water and electricity there to begin with.
I guess that would be a short answer, yes.
Okay.
Yes, and there's nothing to be added. So if there is anything on that plan, there's nothing added. It's just what's in existence today.
So Stacy, no benches, correct?
Correct.
No.
That's the right answer.
There was one noted on the drawings.
Right, yeah.
Make a big X through it.
Okay,
We can all laugh about it.
we can do that.
Okay.
Great.
Any other questions from the table?
I mean, I have issues.
Did the original permit have water and electricity included?
There's no language on that, but in those days, they wouldn't have had, I've never seen any language like that, even in some of the DEC permits from the 90s now. So again, that would be, that's something I can't speak to.
We're gonna take
Oh, yeah.
questions from the public and then go through. Okay, I'll
Yeah,
wait
just-
till that time, yeah.
Okay. All right. Anyone in the fiscal audience who has a question? Question. Podium, please.
Sorry, it's Elizabeth Galley. I just have a question I don't think you were answered. Are there lights on there? I know there's electricity, but are there lights and how many are there? And are there going to be additional? What's the plan for lighting? And then are there splash guards existing or not existing?
There's no splash guards.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20 lights listed.
No, there was one light. There's only one light on, there was originally only one light on the deck, not 20 lights, one light.
Okay,
Yeah, because I'm looking at the construction plan and it has little circles.
okay, so there's one light. Okay.
That's going to be just one light, right?
Yes.
I think we can also make sure to say something to the effect of whatever is in existence at the time. Currently, there will not be any added additional electricity there. So Ms. Foyer saying that it's one light there, there will not be anything in existence. However, that's to say that we don't look and see that maybe there might be two. So whatever is in existence today, which I believe is only one, there will not be anything additional regardless of what you see in the plans right there.
There's one other thing I noticed. You show that the existing treated wood piles supporting the catwalk below the mean high water are to be replaced. So that's probably only 2 pilings instead of not all of the treated lumber, just those 2, or?
So I think that was something that we had discussed. Well, maybe we didn't. That was the WMAC's recommendation, which we said we were agreeable to. If there was a continued concern by the board that that the treated wood pilings over the wetland area itself, that would provide more substantial mitigation, then that can be done.
Okay, they did specify below mean high water.
Right, that had come specifically from the WMAC, so we were just consistent with that. But, again, if the board felt that the additional mitigation was necessary to get this closed out and rectified in the best way possible, I don't think there'd be any objection to that.
Okay. Let's stay on that point for a minute. What do you all think? The comment that you made about the tidal wetlands boundary moving since 2018, it looks like it moved quite a bit.
At least the way it was flagged. So I can only account for the current delineation, which is mine. So I can speak to the accuracy of that line. Actually, no, that's not true. I guess I delineated in 2011 as well. Yeah, so Yeah, I mean, I don't have any recollection of it at this point. I would like to believe that however I flagged it in 2011 was correct. But I do have a recollection of how I flagged it recently, and that's how it's shown on the survey, and that is correct. So it is, it's not surprising, completely surprising. I mean, there is a very, very gradual grade there. And in properties where I have seen very, very gradual grades, it does not take much in terms of just a little tiny bit of sea level rise and enough of the storms, and you suddenly get some upland vegetation gets replaced with wetland vegetation. And I believe that's probably what's happened here. I mean, unless I underflagged it in 2011, but it's neither here, which I wouldn't have done on purpose, but of course, it's neither here nor there at this point. It's the current wetlands that we want to make sure that the catwalk makes it over. And there is a bit of a dip there. I mean, you can see that, the property, as is normal with most, wetland boundaries, there is a little bit of a drop. And so you see some of that Bacchus helmifolia and the Hydroprotessans is kind of coming right up. And then once the elevation picks up, that vegetation starts to bail out. And it's really just Phragmites as you get to the lawn.
Yeah, you can actually see like where the ramp ends. Right out here is also where your wet line, like it looks accurate to the photograph, so.
Yes.
Anyone else in the physical room have any questions? All right, I'll move on to the Zoom audience. Kim Bonstrom.
Thank you. 2 questions for the board and only the board. Is there a possibility this is a hybrid dock? And the second question is, what exactly is a hybrid dock? And I ask the question because the town board has granted approval for one hybrid dock, and there's now pending an application for what's been described as another hybrid dock. So let's start with this second question, please. What is a hybrid dock?
A hybrid dock wouldn't be one that's at a residential property, and it's not one that falls into the commercial definition that is at a marina.
And that opinion is based on what? Because it's not defined in the code?
It's lacking in the code.
Yeah, so how do you come up with a pronouncement that's not in the code?
My name's Karen.
Private dock.
Yeah, I was gonna
This
say,
is a
this
private dock
application
on a
does not-
residential property.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this doesn't fall into the hybrid. So we'll have to deal with your question when we get to the dock.
No, let's, please, I'm being polite. What is a hybrid dock? Because you granted one, you've got another pending, you're applying to the New York State Legislature based on a definition of a hybrid dock. Respectfully, what is a hybrid dock?
This application is not a hybrid dock, it's a residential dock, so this public hearing is specifically for this dock. So again, I'm gonna say we will have to address your question when we get to the next application.
You mean Dodge, but how do you know it's not a hybrid dock if it's not defined in the town code?
It's a private dock.
Excuse me. Please don't dodge the question. It's not defined. Hybrid dock is not defined in the code. You granted one application by calling it a hybrid dock. You're applying to the state legislature with the representation, asking them for approval based on the fact that it's supposedly a hybrid dock. I'm asking for a definition of hybrid dock, and how do you know this is not a hybrid dock?
What are you talking about?
I don't know.
Kim, I don't know what application you're referring to, but this is a private residence with a private dock application. It meets all the requirements for a private dock.
Well, except that, thank you, Meg, except that it's a pre-existing illegally constructed dock. So it strikes me that this application is sort of a hybrid application.
No, it's not. It's a residential dock application. Thank you.
So you say, but what is a hybrid dock?
That's not, we will discuss it at the work session. This is a period for public comments. And so
Yes,
we
exactly. And
we hear you.
That's what well, you hear me. You're not answering me. What is a hybrid dock?
Generally, at public hearings, we listen to the public. We don't answer questions. That happens at the town board work sessions when we discuss it.
Well, thank you, but Meg already answered it. Meg already gave her opinion.
Yeah, we've given you some latitude. Thank you. Pam, you're next.
Yes, good evening, everyone. As a private dock, this dock should only be allowed to be 100 feet in length. With including this walkway that's existing, that originally at the last hearing, I believe they said they were going to remove the entire 40 feet. It's still over the 100-foot length of a private dock. I have a little bit of a concern with that. And I also have a concern that I don't see that, permitting this to just go through without actually going through a full wetlands permit application. And just kind of saying, well, it's been there, they dismantled the entire thing, they rebuilt it, it's wider than what the DEC would necessarily approve for a dock in that kind of region. Usually they're only allowing 4 feet wide. I don't know that anyone's added up the numbers. This is the first time I've seen the plan since it was only just posted, how many minutes prior to this public hearing. I also don't have an answer on how much this applicant has had to pay in fees to the town for violating the town code. I'd like to have an answer to that. And has this been now completely reviewed by the WMAC as it's presented to us this evening for this public hearing?
I don't think it'll go back to WMAC because they addressed all 3 comments that came from their recommendations, which was replace all decking with open graded decking, replace all pilings below mean high water mark with untreated pilings, and float should have chalking per DEC instruction stone.
And the replacement of the decking with the permeable decking was the trade-off for the extra foot wide.
And I believe.
Okay, but what about the length?
Yeah, the code, I believe, reads 100 feet from mean high water, not including a walkway. So this dock in that case would probably be about 10 feet past mean high water, plus a 20-foot float and a 12-foot ramp. So it's definitely under 100 feet.
I'd like to add that up again.
Well,
I just find it, let me just say this. I really just find it upsetting that we have someone who has violated the town code. They demolished the dock that was existing. Everything that was there was demolished at one point. And then this was rebuilt under the guise of reconstruction, which the record does not show that. And I'm always concerned about enforcement of the town code. And I'd like to see the town board take a firm stand on this application and perhaps make this applicant remove the entire structure and start all over again. And that's my comment. Thank you.
I would like to say something in rebuttal, please. Thank you so much. While I do understand that there are many opinions and many conclusions that have potentially been drawn based on hearsay, speculation, and all of the above, number one, with regard to the question about fines, there have been multiple fines which have been paid already. It doesn't matter what the cost and the amount is. It is not for public knowledge. If you'd like to go and seek that information, I believe that you can foil that from each of the government entities. Whether or not they want to give that to you is up to them. That's number one. Number two, with regard to the wetlands permit, that has been asked and answered. This has been before the DEC, they have made their recommendations, as the board has said. There were fines instituted. There was nothing to be at all said with regard to needing a wetlands permit, since the DEC that said this has nothing to do with a wetland, the wetlands at all. Number 3, with regard to removing the dock in its entirety. Number 1, not only would that cause a complete detriment to the homeowner themselves, but it would also cause severe and utter terrible, what's the word I'm looking for?
Degradation.
Thank you. Degradation to the wetlands. It would be absolutely a catastrophe to do that much harm to the wetlands, especially when the wetlands have been surviving the way that they have with this dock already in place. So all of that said, I think it has been made very clear that unfortunately, this all started not necessarily as a bad actor. This was a mistake that was made. People make mistakes. We are all human. And the Karen Foyer has realized the mistake. That's why we are before here doing every single thing that we possibly can to move forward, to finalize a plan, to make sure that it is done in the best possible way that it is being done, inclusive of making sure that the wetlands are a #1 priority. So, all that said, this is all to move forward and not to move backwards.
If I could comment, I wasn't able to raise my hand.
You just state your name for the record, please.
Elizabeth Narden, and I live on Hedges Road and next to the property in question, but I also lived there when Sharon Cast submitted her original application. That application to protect the wetlands was an elevated catwalk, elevated above the Phragmites, not through the Phragmites, above the Phragmites. In order to access that catwalk, you had to go up a series of stairs, about 10 stairs. There are no stairs on this catwalk. What they are calling a catwalk is not at all what Sharon Cast put in there with town board's approval 25 years ago. That dock was put in with town board's approval to protect the wetlands by elevating the catwalk above the Phragmites, not through the Phragmites. There are no stairs on that dock now, none. And it was, in fact, stated in Karen Feuer's letter as a justification for not having stairs was that their advanced age made the stairs problematic. They do live in a 3-story house. They do have a staircase leading to their front door.
I'll do
No,
I do not agree that
I don't think this
that
is
one person at a time, please.
necessary to be talking about the
That's the
not
owner.
the same as what was put in there by Sharon Cast. And 25 years ago, if the board took the initiative to make sure that the wetlands was protected, I do not see how it is fulfilling its mandate to do that by allowing a dock to go through the wetlands rather than, as the original one was, elevated above, and as many docks are on this island, above the Phragmites. It was not a unique dock. This is all over the island. Elevated dock to go over the wetland, not through the Phragmites. Thank you.
And
I'd like to.
Karen, can you?
I was going to say,
I'm here to help you, just let me do
I
that.
was going to say Rob is next.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, Rob, because assuming you will respond to Nardin and let her know that 25 years ago, that might have been the case, but when we bought the home.
Karen, can I just,
Yeah.
I'll respond to what needs to be responded to. So we're starting to get a bit repetitive from what we already covered a few weeks ago, because I believe Ben had asked this question too. The catwalk is still an elevated catwalk. There's nothing about the cast permit that talks about elevating a catwalk above the Phragmites. If you elevated a catwalk above the Phragmites, it would probably be 7 or 8 feet in the air. I've been doing this for 3 decades with local agencies from Montauk to Queens. I have never in my life heard of that. I've never seen it as a requirement. The standard requirement is, and it has varied, and I don't want to go into a long thing here, but typically anywhere from 2.5 to 4.5 feet above the grade of marsh. The idea is that the catwalk be elevated so that the marsh can continue to grow beneath it. One of the additional advances that has occurred over the past 10 or 15, 20 years is the introduction of the permeable open grate decking, which we've talked about already. So that would be one of the proposals here, is not only would the catwalk remain elevated as it had been built by cast, but it would also have the permeable decking. We also, at the last hearing, submitted for the record a June 2018 survey from F. Michael Hemmer, which was prior to Ms. Fuhr's purchase of the property, which showed that the prior owner, which I believe was cast, had constructed the elevated catwalk, which was accessed not by a series of sets of stairs, but by a 5-foot by 11.4-foot ramp, which was a little short and a little steep. But that's what they had there. That's what was on the survey. The reason that that was replaced was because it was a little too short and a little too steep, and it really didn't get you past anymore the wetland area. There seems to be getting something lost here, equating an elevated dock with the destruction of wetlands. It's quite the opposite. The reason that the local and state agencies have always allowed the construction of elevated catwalks through a wetland is because you can regulate them. You can create a single fixed point of access that makes everybody walk in one place from point A to point B and is constructed in a way that the wetlands can continue to grow beneath them. If you didn't allow for that, and you said you can't have any access to the water, which is something the village of Sag Harbor considered about 20 or so years ago, you figure out you can't stop people from walking to the water on their waterfront property. So they can take their sunfish and their canoes and the kayaks and they just trample the wetland area. I was at a hearing once in Southampton Village where a neighbor showed up and was protesting the construction of an elevated catwalk and brought pictures of their own wetland and said, you don't need a catwalk, you can just do this. We just pull our stuff through. And in the wake of all of that was all the wetlands were gone. They were trampled and destroyed. What has gone wrong here is not the dock. It was just the work was done without a permit. It exceeded the threshold, which caused Mrs. Fuhr to have to come to this board for, I don't know, the 11th time. For all these speakers, they get it. That's why they're here. That's why they're agreeing with the WMAC. We're agreeable to what the board will impose. And I've suggested a way to get rid of a lot of the excess catwalk. We can't get rid of all of the ramp section because you don't want them landing in the wetland, because that will actually damage the wetland. Walking on a single fixed elevated structure over the wetland is designed to not do that. This has been going on, I don't know, for a year. The concerns here have to do with the treated timber, which we're going to resolve, the unchocked float, which we're looking to resolve, the excess walkway leading toward the house, which is unnecessary, we're looking to resolve. We're looking to resolve everyone's concerns. There seems to be this constant input, and I'm not sure why, from people who aren't directly impacted by this, to just sort of just keep wanting to punish these people because they didn't get a permit. If they had come to you and said, we would like a permit to reconstruct this dock, the board would have issued the permit. The board issued a permit to the casts in the 90s. You wouldn't have said, no, you can't have a dock anymore. There would be no basis for that kind of determination. So the problem is not in the structure. The problem was just the fact that the permit wasn't obtained. And that's why we're here. And we really would love to get this behind us and keep rehashing information that's already been covered on the record now. That would be my request. If there's some substantive concern that one of the neighbors has or the board has about something specific to this dock, I'm happy to answer them. But we're just starting to talk in vague commentary now, and it's not really constructive, I dare to say. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this? Albert, you had something you want to say?
Yeah, I have to speak in vague language. I don't, this application, I said it the last time, Rob, this is like forgiveness rather than permission. And I can't go with permission on this. No application. It was a repair and then it became a replacement, a total replacement with no permit. People have to be responsible for their actions. I mean, you can't stick your head in the sand and say, well, I don't know, the contractor, there's a town code and you can look at it and decide what you have to do, figure it out. There was no permit.
That's why they're here.
I mean,
we get it, we hear you, but they don't have any other choice but to run away forever or come before this board and now ask for your permission to resolve.
Rob, if you're gonna speak, just come up to the podium, please.
I'm done, Steve, thanks.
All right.
I can't turn the other way. People complain on this island about no enforcement, no retribution for things, people just taking advantage. There's got to be a point someplace, Rob, where you draw a line in the sand. And this one, this was abusive. I talked to the building department, the building inspectors, about this just to apprise, because I know this started before I was on the board. I wanted to get the application, understand it. And they said when they first went to the job site and they saw this, what was going on, the wetlands there were piles of dirt in the wetlands, it was trampled, but there was somebody working in the house, a contractor was working in the house, doing work that required a permit, and there was no permit. So it just kind of added to the whole thing. I mean, there was just a lot going on here that I can't accept.
So I hear you, and in terms of the principle behind what you're saying, I don't disagree with you at all. My question in response would be, what would, aside from paying their fines, which they've been asked to do, to submit application to legalize the work that was unpermitted, which is why we're here, and to mitigate the work in a proper way that would be consistent with the DEC and consistent with the town board's recommendations, which is why we're here, what else would you have them do? There is no other remedy. I mean, if somebody builds a pool where a prior pool was permitted and it's a zoning compliant location and and they didn't get a permit, they would be fined and they would be forced to permit the structure, right? So that's really the same thing here. What I hear what you're saying, that this is the kind of thing that goes on all
Just
too
keeps
often
going. It just
in the
keeps going,
villages and
Rob.
towns across the island. And I don't
Just keep
begrudge
going.
your feeling of your mission to stop it. But when you say there has to be a spot where we draw the line, that's why we're here. That's why we're saying they'll go out and replace all the wood decking that was put in with open grate decking, which is probably what you would have told them to do had they come in for a permit. We're saying we'll replace the treated pilings below mean high water, because that's what the WMAC asked. If you want every treated piling removed and replaced with an untreated piling, they'll do that too, because maybe that's what you would have told them if they had come in for a permit.
Well, that's what
So
the
it's-
DEC
but it's some-
permit said that originally.
Well,
Untreated pilings.
that was what the cast permit said originally. They said locust posts, but that's not what Mr. Cass built. That's not what was there from what I understand. But at this point, we're saying, then they'll do that. In other words, the point, what I'm trying to get to here is The way to resolve your concern is to force them to do the stuff the right way, as it would have been done had the permission been asked instead of the forgiveness. And again, that's what they're here offering to do. And whether they're offering it or you're imposing it, as long as you get the right end result, that has to be separate from the punishment for, well, it was done without a permit. That's what the fines are here for, and Steve can speak to that, and code enforcement, that, I'm not here for that. Whether they pay $10 or $10 million for the fact that the act was committed without a permit, that's one thing. But no matter what, this has to get resolved, right? Because if your concern is, if everybody is really so concerned about the environment, then that's what we have to focus on. How do we correct the condition that's out there right now that's not consistent with the mission of environmental protection? And that's what all these very specific changes and mitigation measures are being proposed. That's not supposed to make you not mad that this was done. It's just how you're going to make it get fixed the right way. And how people on this island get punished for doing stuff without a permit is one thing. But you have to keep your eye on how do we fix the problem. This isn't like somebody went and built a swimming pool in the middle of a vegetated wetland and now they're asking you to permit it. You'd be telling them to take it back out and replant it. But nobody would be telling somebody not to replace their dock. It's a permitted dock. You issue permits for new docks all the time. This is not unique. This is not unusual.
Stephen, what were the fines that were imposed? I know there was a 4,000 DEC fine, but from the town.
There were no fines issued by the town. If there was a violation issued, at most, they would pay a $250 fine. So, but they will have to pay enhanced permit fees. So the building department, I believe it's 5 times whatever the permit fee would be is what they're going to have to pay. So it's administrative fine, so to speak, on the building department side. But again, even if we issued them a ticket today, it would be at most $250.
Why have you, Stephen? Contractor on the job.
I'm sorry, what was your question?
The contractor that did the work
Okay.
without a permit. Why didn't we bring him up in front of the contractor review board?
Well, number one, we don't have,
What?
number one, we don't have one right now, a contractor review board. We have to create it. And number two.
Well, I sit on the contractor review board.
We need one more member.
We're missing a contractor. We need a contractor to be on board for our code.
No, and it was never brought to my attention as a complaint. There's 2 others that are in the hopper that I'm trying to get in front of the contractors review board, but again, we don't have one yet.
I mean, the contractor obviously should have been brought before the contractor review board and lose his license for a period of time and not be able to work on Shelter Island.
Yeah,
he knows better than this. He knew what he was doing.
Okay, yeah, so there is no statute of limitation, so we can bring that contractor in front of that board once it's constituted. And I want to mention a couple things. As far as the electric and the water, we need to make sure that there's building department approvals for that. You can't install that without having those approvals. So we'll have to explore that.
Not apply if it's existing.
I'm sorry?
Will they need a new permit for that if it's already existing?
Yes, you would have to legalize it if it's existing, and again, depending on the building department and what their criteria is to issue permits for the electric and the plumbing, it may have to be removed. So we just have to explore that.
I had 2 open questions, and how do we want to proceed? I would like we need the construction drawings. So we do have to get those because otherwise the building department can't, we need to know what's there.
Understood.
How do you all feel about replacing all of the pilings with, that are treated wood, replacing them with untreated wood?
I think we should only have the ones that are below the mean high water replaced. Otherwise, you're going to tear up the entirety of the wetlands in that area.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's what was discussed in the WMAC.
Right,
Mhm.
okay.
Okay, so scratch that
I
one.
mean, I think differently about it, but I'm be outvoted, so.
Well, I'm sort of leaning that it should be, but if we've got two board.
I mean, it should be the DEC recommends it, and it's wetlands.
I just.
We don't need pressure treated lumber in the wetlands.
Yeah, I think we
DEC did recommend.
No, the DEC recommended that it be removed below.
Mean high water, but how many filings are within the wetlands?
The applicant is willing to replace all of them if we want them replaced, but.
Rob, do you want to just address that point about the pilings and the
wide
wetlands?
swath of. Yeah, I mean, the
Yeah,
concern
but-
is the tearing up of the wetlands, but
Yeah,
with
the
the
damage it'll
migration.
do is worse than the pilings that are above the water line. The damage it'll do to replace them is gonna be.
Yeah, so to respond to Steve's request, and I think I mentioned this at the last hearing, I had spoken, of course, now my mind is completely blank. Someone who was on the WMAC and isn't on the WMAC anymore, he was there
John Needham.
forever. John Needham, thank you. When I originally was first being asked to get involved with this, I did contact John, and I contacted one of the board members whose name I'm also, it's embarrassing. Jim, yes, liaison. I talked to both of them because I was trying to get a handle, not just from Mrs. Fuhr's perspective, but from the town's perspective, where things were at with the case before I got involved. And that was one of the things I believe that John had said. There was discussion with WMAC for exactly what Ben just said. If they start asking you to replace the whole thing again, whether it's the pilings or the width or whatever, then you're basically telling them to go back into the same area that basically has settled. The vegetation will continue to come in very nicely once you replace the wood decking with the open grade decking. You're causing all that disturbance again. That said, one of the original requirements of the CAS permit were untreated posts. So that was something that was another thing that could bring it into compliance with the original permit and could provide additional long-term mitigation. Again, with the ultimate mission of getting this resolved in the way that's to the board's satisfaction. Mrs. Fuhr had advised me that she would consent to that. I'll leave it to the board which way they want to go on that. I mean, it's not for me to say, but those were the different considerations. And that was really it. Steve, does that sufficient for what you were asking me to respond to?
Yes, thank you.
All right. And by the way, I think that the thing I forgot to ask is the reason I think the WMAC came up with the idea of it being below mean high water is because when the pilings are constantly exposed to water twice a day, that's where there's a potential for the treatment material to leach out. Whereas when it's upland, I'm not aware of any studies that show the amount of leaching in the wetland versus in it, but we do know that if the piles are constantly in water, that's the highest risk of actually leaching into the water.
While we have you up there, lights were mentioned by one of the neighbors. And there's one light on the dock now?
So I would again have to ask Mrs. Fuhr to speak directly to the light. I don't know what the situation with the light is. I do understand from conversations with them that the lighting, that the electricity and light were there previously. I know just from doing this in general, there's always some interest unrelated to all agencies that we obtain permits from, but the US Coast Guard usually wants sort of a down-facing light at the end of a dock so that people who are navigating at night know that there's a dock there. So that's why every dock application that I submit, I always just by habit show water and electricity being proposed because people want water for various reasons to the dock, and you have to have electricity at least for safety lighting. Whether the rest of the catwalk is being, lit up or not, I think that's really something that, whether it's in the code, I'm not sure, but that would be something within the board's purview. There's no reason to make it like, Disney World catwalk. It's probably just a safety issue that if you're out there at night, there's some sort of, small lights, but not to anyone would see. Yeah, or bring a flashlight, right? So that's what I'm saying. I don't want the conversation to get hung up on lighting. I think that would, there has to be at least some light at the end, because again, I believe that is a Coast Guard requirement. But, it's not something that's broadcasting, it's just something that shows that the structure is there.
Was there a building permit obtained for that?
That I don't know. It was, you would have to go back to the building department and ask whether Ralph Cass got a permit to add water and electricity.
Which is what Steven's.
And it sounds like what Steve is saying is that if regardless of whether it's there, it's not magically legal just because it's there. If it required a permit, I do this all the time in Southold too. It's the same thing. You have to get like something from the building department, that shows that the electricity's been installed safely and et cetera. So that would be something that would have to be.
So this is like a continuation of the whole thing, just the electric there without a building permit.
Well, right, but as we talked about last time, that one of the challenges Mrs. Fuhr has faced is not only for what was done on her watch, but there were things done by the casts, somebody before Mrs. Fuhr purchased the property that weren't entirely consistent or permitted either. So, that's part of it. But again, we're going to keep coming back to the same points. The idea is, I hear you and let's fix it.
With the floating dock, there's a couple of pilings that keep the floating dock in place.
Right.
Are those treated or untreated? Because it shows them in the cast photo as well, but I wasn't sure if they were newer or if they are old.
Anything, particularly in the late 90s, and so I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I'm guessing they're treated.
All right.
Because I can't think of too many marine contractors, particularly, almost 20 years ago, or more than 20 years ago, more than 25 years ago, who would have put piles in the water to support a float that were untreated unless they were required to do so. It's very unlikely.
All right.
So can I just understand one thing? If you're going to be now testing to see if the dock itself is actually treated when it hasn't been touched, I'm just a little bit confused as to what the purpose of that is. I as much as you think they haven't been harmed here, they have in multiple ways. They haven't been able to use their property in the way that they've been able to. There's multiple things, and we're not going to get into that, but I just want to understand from the legal perspective, if something has been there, it hasn't been touched, moving forward, then asking them to then redo that piece of it when they haven't touched it yet. I'm just trying to understand the actual floating dock itself.
I'm not opposed to the floating dock. I was just asking if those two piles that hold the dock in place are the same untreated lumber as the two piles at the end of the dock. And if that's the case, I would recommend removing the 4 piles that are submerged all the time.
Got it.
Instead of the entire dock, just those 4.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a recommendation.
Right.
Because it's below the mean water.
We have to figure out, or at least do some research on the water and electricity on the stock.
Yeah.
If there's going to be a light, it needs to be, a downward facing soft light, and no other lights, in my opinion. And the rest of it, we've been talking about this for a while, and I always thought it was a reasonable solution to a problem we're looking at.
I was going to suggest that we request the construction drawings. What's the time frame you think you can get those?
I mean, probably within 2 weeks. Is there a particular time you would need them by in order to advance this to the next?
Well, that's what I was
Just
trying
tell me your schedule of how this would be done most efficiently, and I'll tell you if I can do it.
Well, I was wondering whether or not we close or adjourn this. So that we
At this point, I would ask you to close it. Just subject, the construction drawings would not present anything new. It would just reflect what's on that survey I just submitted.
No, well, we'd have to close it subject to rent and receipt, otherwise it wouldn't be part of the record. So we'd have to, so let's come up with a date that you're comfortable with, that you can get the drawings back. And well, is it 2 weeks?
I was gonna say September 6th, which is next Friday. I know we have a holiday in there. Because then we can discuss it at a work session on the 10th and decide how to move forward on the 16th if we're ready.
I can certainly try. Yeah.
Should we define exactly what we want to see in the design drawings and the construction drawings so that there's no confusion or questions?
Yes, but I don't know how to define that. That would have to come from the building department.
Well, I mean, we can say that we want them to replace the treated wood piles at the end of the dock and the 2 holding the float in place. So those 4, call those out. If there's 2 or 3 at the float, I'm not sure. On the picture, it looks like 2. Chalking the float, as is already recommended. Keeping 1 light at the end of the dock, as is typical. The open grate decking to replace the existing decking.
Water, where water's gonna be located.
Well, that has to be legalized as well, though. It has to be permitted.
Right, they'd have to go to the building department.
So just be proposed.
This is, right,
Even if it's existing, it's legally, it's still proposed.
right. So then the existing electric, the existing water, and you would remove that upland 24.2 feet of walkway, so just show it from the ramp to the float.
The first
No,
20,
they're removing 20.
the first 20 feet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so basically, Rob, what memorialize in the construction drawings what you have on the survey,
Right.
but also include electric and plumbing.
But mention the water and electricity and specific to the 1 light.
Yes.
Correct.
So I do want to make clear that and I actually didn't think of this until this moment, to chock the float, you have to have 2 pairs of piles. So we would have to add 2 untreated piles to the float, because you can't chock a float with 2 piles. You need 2 pairs to support the bed frame, basically. So we would have to show that, have to add that to the survey and the drawings. The other thing, I do want to ask this to be clear, and I don't know if this is a question for Steve or the board. When you're talking about construction drawings, typically the drawings that we submit, my office submits for DEC plans to this board, they're schematic drawings. They're not, licensed engineered construction plans. Are you looking for like construction plans with a PE stamp on them, or are you just looking for schematic drawings the same as what you have that's out of date, basically, in the prep packet you have, the ladder?
I believe it's
schematic.
Yeah, I believe it's there, because that's what we normally, like.
Right. Okay, I just want to make sure you weren't asking for something more than that in this case.
No, it's something.
No. And yeah, that's fine. But we just, again, for historical record purposes, we want to make sure everything's there.
I understand.
Pam, you have a question? You're on mute.
Yes, I do. I'm sorry. Yes, I do. I was looking at the application drawings and the lengths of these pieces to this dock. They don't seem to match what's been submitted today. The earlier one showed the ramp was only 11.4 feet and the dock was 58.1 feet. And what we're looking at today, the ramp is 15.4 feet and the dock is 57.1 feet. So if you're going to request new drawings of any kind, could we get those discrepancies straightened out? What actually is there? What are you perhaps going to permit after all of this discussion?
So
I would
those
just ask to see that,
dimensions,
and perhaps don't close this hearing because of these discrepancies.
So the dimensions that were just referenced, like that 5 by 11.4, so that's from the 2018 survey. So that was what was there prior to Ms. Fuhr's purchase. What is there today, as has been surveyed by Hemmer, is what's on the Hemmer survey. So there's no discrepancy, it's just this different dimensions as a result of the replacement than were there previously for the reasons we've already discussed twice.
I was gonna say, my understanding from when you started was that you hadn't submitted the construction drawings until you knew what direction.
Correct, yeah, so, and again, if anyone is looking at the construction drawings that were submitted by Ms. Fuhr a year ago, to just ignore them, they're out of date.
Yes.
So then my assumption then is that the ramp is in fact 15.4 feet and the dock is 57.1 feet.
That's correct.
So this
Correct.
dock is in fact over the 100-foot length required or permitted for private docks.
No.
Just something to note. And
No.
I would like to say my interest in this project is one, because this is what the town code says. Private docks should not be longer than 100 feet.
So the town.
So
the
questioning
town-
who I am and why, I am not addressing the applicant, I am addressing the board. My questions are in regard to following the town code. This is my interest. This is solely my interest. And I'm sorry if that offends the applicant, that I like to see the town board follow the town code, but that is my mission. So thank you very much.
So just clarify again for the record, and Meg, you may have mentioned this already, but I believe, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that town code limits the length of a dock to 100 feet seaward of high water. This one is less than 40 feet seaward of high water. I think the total length of structures may be around 103, 104 feet, but again, only less than 40 feet of that is seaward of high water. So it is 100% consistent with the code in that regard.
I'm sorry, I have to disagree. The town code includes ramps and docks and walkways and floaters. It's all a part of the dock. And that's all I'll say.
Note of it. Okay, so if we hold this open for written correspondence and your submission September 6th. How does the board feel about that? I'm okay with that.
Work session Tuesday.
Well, no, because we don't have a work session scheduled at the moment next week.
Right, because we're, it's the holiday.
Yes.
Amber, I'm sorry, could you read, I
So we
think I heard you said you close the hearing subject to written submission that has to be due by the 6th.
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I'm.
So it's due
that's what
by
I'm
the 6th for consideration.
At
the
September
next-
10th.
That's fine by me.
Is that a town board meeting on the 10th?
No, the town
No,
board
it's
is on the
next week.
Can't close when there are unresolved legal questions. Tilt.
Let's leave it open then. I mean, is there a need to close it?
You want, leaving it open?
I think he's talking about his hybrid questions that he's talking about. So I don't think those
I
are
don't think,
applicable
yeah, I
to
don't think
this.
we have legal questions on this particular application.
I'm not sure what tilt means.
I'm in favor of closing it.
I'm okay with
I'm
closing it.
okay with this.
I'll make a motion to close this public hearing.
Second, pending written correspondence.
Pending written correspondence,
Second,
September 6th. All in favor?
aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Oppose.
Thank you for hearing us. I know this is not an easy one.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, we will now reconvene the public hearing on the Perlman Music Program Site Plan Review application.
Do we have a ruling on
If, Mr. Bostrom, if you interrupt one more time, I will ask that you be removed from the meeting. Okay, so on the Perlman Music Program, we, since the last town board meeting, we received the vegetation plan, but we have not received any committee reports just because of timing with the way the meeting schedules go. And also just receiving this information, because I know that the vegetation plan was, CAC who's looking at this wanted to take a look at it, and also I think town engineer, SWIP plan, things like that. So we do have some people here for the applicant. I don't know if you wanted to take us through the vegetation plan and just go over that. And then we will have to adjourn this until September 16th. So it's.
You know what, the public, there's no document posted on the vegetative plan. The public should have access to it to be able to give comment.
It just not get posted yet. I don't know. Is Christina still on?
It wasn't posted today.
She was here.
Yeah, she
she's
still
on.
is on. Let me just take a quick look. We could still have them walk us through the vegetation plan on Zoom if they're prepared to do that, and then it will get posted. We're not going to close this public hearing.
Okay.
So there will be opportunities for the public to speak. I didn't know if, I don't know, Anna or Lee, do you wish to speak?
Lee, go ahead, or David, or.
Yeah, this is Lee Skolnick, the architect. We, these plans and reports are dribbling in. So we know that you can't close the application yet. Did you receive the archaeologist report yet?
No, I did not see it.
That we know is coming through. As far as the vegetation plan, I don't know if we can go over it tonight. David, what do you think?
Yeah, if you wish to go over it tonight, we will make the time for it. If you wish to wait until the next town board meeting.
I
think there's no harm in waiting for the next one. This is David.
Okay.
Yeah,
We can
I would suggest you wait as well. So again, the public would have an opportunity to digest it, so it could be more productive.
I would agree. I'd like to hear the public at the same time, but.
It would be helpful to know if other plans should be presented at the next meeting so we can prepare the presentation.
I will work on that with all of the various people tasked with the different parts of site plan review.
Thank you.
Well, okay, just so you're aware, we're waiting for reports from several departments and committees. And committees are bound by their meetings and when they meet, so there's some delay bureaucratically injected into it. But you should be prepared to have everything you want to present at the next hearing. So you shouldn't wait. If you need some information from those reports, obviously you're stalled. But if there's other things that you would like to present, please have it ready for the next hearing.
And what is that date?
September 16th.
16th.
Oh, and we'll post the vegetative plan now.
Yes, I'm just looking to see. I was just pulling up what's on. Yeah, no, it doesn't look like it didn't look like it was added. Okay, so we'll make that happen before the next meeting. Okay, so we will.
Shouldn't the grocery report be on the website as well?
They haven't completed it yet. They're working on it.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
I know they were requesting more information, part of the report. Okay, that has to be, okay, all right.
So we will adjourn until September 16th, this public hearing. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
and then, oops, thanks. All right, we will now reconvene the public hearing on the proposed amendment to Town Code Chapter 43 entitled Building Construction to require upon the transfer of real property the installation of an innovative alternative on-site water treatment system.
I'm recusing myself from the conversation. Yeah. Because I work with a family business and we do installations of IA systems.
Okay, thank you. And we did receive some correspondence, and Amber will read that. It's got 4 that that I have, or maybe it's a 5. I think 5. Yeah.
Correspondence from Pam Dennis. My review of the proposed legislation to revise the town code has ignited the following comments. 1, this proposed legislation is discriminatory. The mandated revisions proposed exempt any number of persons or entities, LLCs, from this time of transfer law, which specifically burdens the residential taxpayers, but not the business entities. This is not keeping with the Suffolk County Sanitary Code. Suffolk County Sanitary Code makes 2 distinction of properties in regard to septic systems, single-family dwellings and other than single-family dwellings. Suffolk County Sanitary Code requires the installation of IA system on all new construction generating wastewater, no exceptions. 2, the proposed legislation does not include any method of monitoring these IA systems once installed. The town does not currently have a process in place to assure maintenance of these systems will be monitored as per Suffolk County law. For example, sampling every year for the first 3 years, nor the staff available to enforce this legislation. There is no designated responsible management entity nor organizational structure required to manage installation and maintenance of over 1,000 IA systems island-wide. 3, the proposed legislation will effectively decrease property values for owners wishing to sell. Buyers will request for a decrease in asking price by $50,000 or more to cover the cost of installing an IA system, not including electrical work and landscaping of any kind upon transfer. 4, the proposed legislation does not remove the 1,500 square feet exemption from the town code. Again, Suffolk County's Sanitary Code requires the installation of IA system on all new construction generating wastewater unless the existing septic system is conforming to current standards. New construction includes pool houses, ADUs, accessory apartments, accessory sleeping quarters, etc. 5, the proposed legislation does not identify the criteria for good cause exemption. East Hampton Sanitary Code Chapter 210 contains this language and the criteria is delineated. The ambiguity in language in this Shelter Island Town Code revision may certainly expose the town to legal action not readily foreseen. This is evidenced by many Article 78 cases against municipalities for such poorly drafted legislation. The town board wishes to revise any portion of the town code. A full investigation into the legality of new legislation must be vetted in conjunction with federal and state laws. The proposed law does not consider the financial burden placed on the residents by this mandate. There has been an indication that town grants will not be available to cover installation of these systems or to offset the additional costs associated with these systems. For example, electrical work, landscaping, relocation of a private well. Should this become mandated, for the intent of this law to be fulfilled, a recurring source of funding must be in place as a local match needed to secure federal and state funding. The town board has determined that the installation of more IA systems can be mitigated nitrogen contamination caused by conventional septic systems. Thus, upon the transfer of real property, IA systems shall be required to be installed. This legislation must include all real property regardless of ownership to be effective and legally sound. As you consider my comments and those of others regarding this legislation, I'm requesting that the public hearing be adjourned today so further discussion may continue, especially Pam Dimmer.
It was written on August
5th.
But it was, I was not here. It was open and adjourned.
from Sandra O'Connor, also on August 5th. To the town board, the fastest way to get residential IA septic systems in the ground is to mandate their installation prior to property transfer, as Massachusetts has done for over 30 years, eliminating the need for enforcement after a property transfer. As I understand it, there are low-interest loans available. There is also a tax credit if the property is seller's primary residence. However, it might not cover the full cost. Typically, sellers include the cost of the installation and the listing price. The proposal to mandate residential IA septic systems upon property transfer would have benefited from the public input prior to setting the public hearing. Did you investigate how other New York State municipalities are addressing their nitrogen intrusion emergency? Did you consider mandating IA septic system installation prior to property transfer? Why did you go with upon property transfer rather than prior to property transfer? Did you consult the real estate broker community as well as any attorneys who represent buyers and/or sellers in real estate transactions regarding the impact of the immediate effectiveness of the mandate on the real estate transactions already in progress? Consider the following hypothetical scenario. Buyer Jones signed a contract of sale to purchase seller Smith's property, which does not have an IA septic system, on June 15th. The closing is scheduled on or about September 15th after effectiveness of the amended local law that mandates Buyer Jones install an IA septic system within 3 years of the date of the property transfer. For example, the closing date. Have you created grounds for a lawsuit on the part of Buyer Jones who, had he known about the mandate before he signed the contract of sale, might have walked away from the transaction with seller Smith, or might have entered into a transaction with seller Brown, whose property already has an IA septic system, or might have negotiated lower price with seller Smith in anticipation of the cost of a mandated IA septic system installation? The scenario could be avoided and effectiveness of mandated were 6 months from approval or such time recommended by the aforementioned real estate broker community and attorneys. I urge you not to approve the proposed local law amendment to mandate the installation of IA septic systems upon property transfer as currently drafted until you have considered fully and unintended consequences. Respectfully, Sandra O'Connor. Next one, also on August 5th, from Kimberly Noland. Dear members of the town board, I am partly in favor of the proposed legislation that requires an upgrade of septic systems upon a real property transfer. There is a problem with the legislation, however, and that the legislative intent and legislative summary both refer to transfer of all real property, while the actual addition to the code section 43-10.4 applies only to improved residential property. This is not only unfair and discriminatory to the residential homeowners who pay 95% of property tax on Shelter Island, but also exempts the biggest water users and waste generators, for example, commercial businesses like hotels and restaurants. It allows multi-room hotels and multi-seat restaurants. These generate far more waste than the average home to maintain antiquated septic cesspools for the years without an upgrade. I ask the town board to adjourn the hearing until my concern is discussed and addressed. I urge you to require inclusion of commercial properties both as environmental matter and one of fundamental fairness. There will be big property tax assessment increase for all residential homeowners this year, and higher property tax burden may not affect businesses who pay town taxes based on profits generated. Sincerely, Kimberly Nolan. And what did you gave to me today? I didn't have who it was from.
Oh, Angela Picozzi. Yeah.
So Angela Picozzi on today, August 26th. The IA system should not be mandatory and should not be triggered by the sale of a home on Shelter Island. Furthermore, the technology is environmentally unfriendly, whereby you have an electric pump that runs 24 hours a day using electricity that is generated by ozone depleting fossil fuels, and possibly microplastics shedding out the IA tanks over time and mixing with the water supply. Furthermore, you have costly annual maintenance to keep the unit running. I'd like to see documentation showing the small advantage, if any, of lowering nitrates from the conventional Suffolk County approved system. Most of the homeowners are only here 10 weeks out of the year. How about reducing fertilizers? I bet that would solve more nitrate problems than the $40,000 IA systems. The town should be encouraging the homeowners to test and treat the water that comes out of the taxpayer's water faucet, not treating waste going into the ground. Furthermore, these costly IA systems do not remediate any of the existing problems with the drinking water, like PFAS, pH, E. coli, total coliform bacteria, iron, manganese, copper, lead, chlorides, nitrogen, ammonia. That said, why not treat the water? For a few $1,000s, you can put a reverse osmosis system under your kitchen sink and have the purest drinking water on the planet, not a $40,000 septic system. And lastly, from Group for the East End, received today, August 26th. On behalf of Group for the East End, I write in support of the proposed local law to amend Town Code Chapter 43 to require the installation of an innovative alternative on-site water treatment system upon transfer of real property. As the town board is well aware, wastewater from the antiquated standard septic system is one of the primary causes of nitrogen pollution that plagues our ground and surface water resources, creating several devastating environmental and public health-related consequences. Shelter Island is so vulnerable as it contains its own fragile aquifer and is surrounded by surface waters which have both suffered from a documented decline in water quality over time. Innovative and alternative on-site wastewater systems treat nitrogen, thus greatly reducing the amount that enters our water resources and are considered one of the best available methods for helping to improve water quality. The proposed local law will help to ensure the replacement of standard systems in a timely fashion, expediting nitrogen pollution mitigation. This progressive proposal stands as a model for all towns and villages throughout eastern Long Island. We thank you in advance for your support and commitment to the conservation and preservation of the region's water quality. Sincerely, Robert DeLuca, Group for the East End.
Thank you. Okay, we'll open it up to the public, anyone in the physical audience wish to come forward.
Elizabeth Galley. I actually have a grant from Suffolk County and from Shelter Island to get my IA system put in. So, but what I'm facing is my property isn't allowing it to happen. So what I keep getting bounced back and forth from the DEC to the health department. I've been on a 5-year journey. And so I kind of feel like there are circumstances that would not allow this to occur because I'm experiencing it. So how are we going to address that? Is my main question. And I know there are some other property owners that are facing the same situation. So making a mandate that on transfer would certainly impact my situation.
What is do you mind saying the specifics of what's going on or why your property can't?
My well can't be far enough away from my septic because I have wetlands. And someone's placed their well too close to my septic. So I'm in a triangle that I can't. And I'm not getting approved. I'm just getting bounced back and forth. The health department won't approve me. DEC won't approve me. The health department, they just keep bouncing me back and forth. So, and I'm on my third year of renewing my Suffolk County grant. And I just received my Shelter Island grant when I'm anticipating that I have a 1959 septic system. So I would hope that somebody would be looking for me to change it, but that's not really happening. So, I have wetlands in the back. It's not uncommon to have freshwater wetlands on Shelter Island and saltwater wetlands and a low aquifer and I'm just in a pickle. So I don't think that you've thought that part of it through as to how we would get an IA system if no one's going to approve an IA system.
Elizabeth, I know that the county has a process to that they give variances for setbacks.
I'm asking.
I'm not familiar
I've
with
asked,
the
that's what I've asked for.
You've asked, okay.
No, I'm clearly,
What,
I
they
mean,
say no? They just say no, or
no,
they
I just.
bounce you?
No, they just bounced me. They asked, well, could we take the 10 feet from the DEC? And then the DE says, well, could we take the 10 feet for the health department? And they just keep bouncing me back and forth between both of those. I've had several hearings. They just ask for more information. It's
a
just
conundrum.
obvious that they're not willing to stamp me. They don't want a stamply application because I'm too close to someone else as well that they put there. The health department approved a well that's too close to my septic. My septic's been there since '59. This property was built in 2000. And they put their well next to my septic. And the health department approved it. And I'm now not able to upgrade my system. So, I mean, because we haven't required where septics are on our surveys. I mean, that hasn't been something that we were doing even 10 years ago. So I bought in 2016 and no one required that the septic be sited at that point. So, I mean, so that's how the mistake happened. You know, because they didn't have my information and they were building the property and that was that. So, I mean, if you just have to consider that that's going to happen. We haven't required that septics be sited. I mean, only 6 years ago, even 8 years ago, you weren't citing them. So
You are correct. We don't have anything in this current draft of legislation that speaks to your issue. So, thank you. Anybody else in the room? I've got people on Zoom who wish to speak.
In light of what Elizabeth was just saying,
I need to just state your name, please.
This is Rebecca Schaefer. I just feel that when a mandate gets proposed like this, a more comprehensive study needs to be done because that's an example of a problem. And there could be a lot of those on Shelter Island. I happen to have the system in. I live on the water. I felt it was the right thing to do and not leach into our bays. And I think other people would agree to that. But you can't make a broad statement that it's going to work across the board with every one of these homes. And to your point earlier, when you were reading a comment that speaking to realtors to understand the effect on buyers and sellers, I just think it needs to be more comprehensive.
Thank you.
Owen?
Oh, did you recognize me?
Yes, I did, yes.
Okay. So I already put in a letter, and that letter requested that you also consider this law for all real property, not just the homeowners. So that would include businesses and, non-conforming uses in neighborhoods and hotels and motels, et cetera. So I already said that. I also just am coming from the Shelter Island Association
just
meeting
pause.
tonight.
Kim, I'm just going to interrupt you for a second. I haven't stepped out of the room. Something weird is happening with the Shelter Island Town video. Oh yeah, it just went out here. So we want to get that back online. Sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
Just so that way no one misses anything. Are you able to see? What are you seeing from your perspective? Yeah, okay.
Yourself audio, just not visual.
Yeah, at least we have audio.
Audio, we just lost video.
Okay.
Why?
Okay,
There
that
we go.
works.
Okay, all right. Continue on. Sorry about that.
No problem. So I was just coming from the Shelter Island Association meeting earlier tonight. And as you all know, that's an association that represents neighborhoods. And they had a strong inclination that, the commercial businesses should be included in the legislation. And that they're very strong representatives of individual homeowners. And one of our members is pretty well versed in this because he's head of the Conservation Advisory Committee. He said pretty much right down the line of what Elizabeth was saying about the fact that it's not that easy sometimes to get the permit and it takes a while. So I would also echo the concern that the law be made more publicized to the Realtor community so that you don't have situations like Sandra O'Connor described. And finally, I would concur with Rebecca Schaefer that this really does need additional study and, a few more pretty wide-ranging community discussions because it is very wide-ranging. Thank you. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? What? It's
video, audio, they still have audio.
okay, good. I'll just keep going then. We had more people here earlier, but I think because some of the other public hearings took longer. My inclination is, because it is a topic, and I know that there's a lot of chatter out in the community, is to adjourn.
Amber,
Yes.
I don't know how to raise my hand.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
This is my first time at a town board Zoom.
Okay.
So, hi, everybody. I'm a virgin Zoomer. Anyway, I just wanted to add a few comments to the letter that I sent in. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. I want to start by saying that I'm not opposed to the IA systems. However, I'm opposed to the Shelter Island Town Board forcing the taxpayers of Shelter Island to have to put the IA systems in whenever a house is purchased, especially when the property has a perfectly good operating Suffolk County Health Department approved system. I read the EPA website today, and here is what is posted on the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency's website regarding IA systems. Enhanced IA septic systems designs have shown promise for removing much of the nitrogen in wastewater before it enters surrounding groundwater, estuaries, and ponds, but only a limited number have been field tested. More installations and testing are needed to evaluate performance of the latest enhanced IA systems before they're considered for broader use. So the EPA is saying more installations and testing are needed to evaluate performance of the latest enhanced IA system before they are considered for broader use. Does the Shelter Island Town Board know more than the EPA? Right now, the EPA, along with the departments on Cape Cod, are currently conducting a study to see what really are the benefits of the IA technology. And do these benefits warrant the cost? This is right off the EPA websites. Do these benefits warrant the cost? Each system will be monitored for nitrogen removal performance for approximately 3 years following installation. Groundwater monitoring wells located up and down gradient from participating homes will be monitored to determine the total effects of IA septic systems on groundwater nitrogen levels. It is expected that this demonstration project will provide the following information: performance measures and cost effectiveness information for the deployed IA septic systems, and impact evaluation of the systems on groundwater nitrogen levels. Sounds sensible. The Environmental Protection Agency says, hey, wait, let's test these systems. Let's show proof that this system can actually, and here's the clincher, improve groundwater nitrogen levels. I have not found any documentation showing any advantages of the IA systems directly related to improving your drinking water, nor lowering the nitrates from that of a conventional Suffolk County approved system after it percolates back into the ground. The IA system might show lower nitrate levels from the effluent pipe, but that is as far as the research goes at this time. The IA technology itself is environmentally unfriendly, whereby you have an electric pump that runs 24 hours a day, which uses 1.7 kilowatts of electricity per hour. Let's stop here and do the math. PSE&G charges 12 cents for a kilowatt hour times 1.7 kilowatts equals 20.4 cents per hour, times 24 hours equals $4.90 a day, times 365 days, and lo and behold, you're up to almost $1,800 a year just to run the electric pump. The news only gets worse because your electricity that is generated by ozone-depleting fossil fuels adds to climate change. The IA tanks and plastic piping might be adding microplastics over time that will mix with our water supply. In addition, the environmentally unfriendly process and toxic waste that is created when making these tanks. Now let's take the $1,700 or $1,800 per year increase in your electric bill, an annual service contract of about $400. You're up to about $2,300 before any repairs are done, like say the pump goes. And it gets even worse. Now, depending on the quality of your, it gets even worse. Now, depending on the quality of your water, you might also have to put a filtration system in, because if you have low pH, you need to put water neutralizer in that makes your water hard. So then you have to put a water softener in that will need a dry well installed because the salt from the softener can't go into the IA system. Furthermore, when you purchase a house, you never know where you'll find the septic tank and the leaching pool. So besides the $40,000 initial cost and the water filtration system, you might find that you need to remove the deck on your house to install the new system, or pull out your driveway, or relocate your well, or rip up your trees or your garden. Isn't this fun? I've lost track. Are we up to $100,000 yet? And then they recommend you pump out the tank every 3 to 5 years. And why are we doing this? Didn't we just want to help the taxpayer get fresh water? Here's what I and many other taxpayers that live and work here on Shelter Island think the town should do. Continue to encourage the taxpayers to get their water tested annually. Offer grant money through the CPF fund to taxpayers with poor water quality that are financially challenged and cannot afford to install a water filtration system. Wait to see what the EPA determines. Let's think clearly here and attack the problem head on with what we know works. Fact, IA systems have not been proven to improve the quality of groundwater. We only know that IA systems lower the nitrate level at the discharge pipe. By installing a water filtration system, the taxpayer gets immediate, fresh, clean, safe drinking water. No more problems like PFAS, low pH, E. coli, total coliform bacteria, iron, manganese, copper, lead, chlorides, nitrogen, ammonia, pharmaceuticals. IA systems cannot produce immediate or such extensive results. Plus, water filtration is much less expensive to install and maintain, and it doesn't require huge amounts of electricity, pumps, or controllers. Now, and in the future, I ask the town board to do more back testing of their ideas. Check the facts. Please do not go forward with the IA system trigger law. Repeal the pyramid law. Scrape the melding law. Bring back 1 week rentals without penalty. Work with the taxpayers and not against them. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on this? Sure, come on.
Rebecca Schaefer again, just would like to concur with Angela's points. I think they were well stated, and it sort of reinforces what I said about if we could all work together to do a more comprehensive study and research. I was the first one on the island to put the system in our property because I was told that we're leaching into our bays and it's horrible. I believed it, wanted to be the first person to correct it. But there had been no studies since I put ours in to find out how much our bays are getting cleaner as a result of all the water from properties. So I just want to support what Angela said and another reason to give this a lot more thought before anything is passed. Thank you.
Okay, so I was starting to say before, do we want to hold this open and give more people a chance to speak on this? Or, okay, so we'll adjourn and put it on for September 16th so that those who aren't here today or had to leave early can come back and chime in.
I think the addition of one thing to consider if we're moving forward, the business and commercial aspect.
So we would.
They should be included
So we would.
in the draft.
After we end up closing the public hearing, we'll take this draft back to the drawing board at a work session, make modifications,
so
then it would
people
go to
have-
public hearing again.
People have made good points and they'll continue to make good points.
And there has to be an out for people like Elizabeth Galloway where
Yeah.
they can't get one in, so how can we make them do it?
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
Are you closing it or
We're going to adjourn it until September 16th. Yeah. Okay, all right. That was the last public hearing, so. Okay, so we will adjourn that and go back into the regular meeting. We have resolutions for. I forgot about you out there somewhere.
Somebody gonna wake up today.
Yeah, exactly. It's okay, you can have chocolate to keep you
sleeping?
right. I was eating chocolate. All right, so we have three hearings that we had this evening on bulkhead applications. We have resolutions, since there's nothing controversial about them. So I'll start off with the first one. Whereas Robert and Elizabeth Jaffe, 17 Westmoreland Drive, have petitioned the town of Shelter Island for permission to remove and replace in place approximately 116 linear feet of existing timber bulkhead with vinyl bulkhead and backfill with up to 25 cubic yards of clean sand loam to be trucked in from an approved upland source as per plans prepared by N Consultants dated May 12, 2024. And whereas a public hearing was duly held on the 26th day of August, 2024, for all interested persons to be heard in favor of or in opposition, now therefore, excuse me, be it resolved that pursuant to NYCRR 617.5 C2, this application is deemed a type 2 action. Reasons supporting this determination: the proposed construction, 1, will not cause any obstruction into navigable channels or an interference with navigation. 2, will not adversely affect the public's right to use town waters or land under town waters. 3, will not adversely affect shellfishing grounds or other aquatic wildlife which may exist in the immediate area. 4, will not adversely affect the quality of the tidal waters, shorelines, or beaches. 5, will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent residents. And be it further resolved that the town clerk is hereby authorized to issue a permit for the aforementioned construction as per specifications filed after said applicant pursuant to section 53-9 of the Code of the Town of Shelter Island has filed with the town clerk a certificate that the owner has at least $300,000 liability insurance on the location and operations covered by said permit, a copy of the contractor's current home improvement contractor's license, and a certificate from the contractor performing the operations covered by said permit that said contractor has an owner/contractor's policy issued in favor of the town of Shelter Island for the liability limits of at least $500,000 covering operations of the contractor pursuant to said permit. And be it further resolved that said operations shall be completed within 1 year from the date of issuance of this permit. Said permit is subject to the recommended limitations and any requirements that may be necessary under the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, the Army Corps of Engineers, and any other agencies having jurisdiction. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
And was that resolution, so just read the top then?
Yes.
Okay. Whereas Mary Kuzmarek, 137 Ram Island Drive, has petitioned the town of Shelter Island permission to remove and replace in place approximately 140 linear feet of existing timber bulkhead with vinyl bulkhead, backfill with approximately 75 cubic yards of clean sandy fill to be trucked in from an approved upland source, remove and replace in kind, in place, existing 3.5 feet by 9 feet wooden steps as depicted on the project plan prepared by N Consultants. dated June 24th, 2024. And whereas a public hearing was held on the 26th day of August 2024 for all interested parties to be heard in favor of or in opposition. Now therefore, be it resolved that pursuant to NYCRR 617.5 C2, this application is deemed a type 2 action.
Reasons are all the same.
Yeah, the reasons are all the same. And so we end up with be it further resolved, be it further resolved, town clerk is hereby, well, the same conditions. Be it further resolved that said operation shall be completed within 1 year from the date of issuance of this permit. Said permit is subject to the recommended limitations and any requirements that may be necessary under the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, the Army Corps of Engineers, and any other agency having jurisdiction. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Whereas Bruce Wallasoff and Margaret Garrett, 60 Peconic Avenue, have petitioned the town of Shelter Island for permission to install approximately 19 linear feet of 500 to 1,500 pound armor stone landward of existing bulkhead return, re-nourish approximately 180 square feet area of eroding bank with approximately 10 cubic yards of clean sand to be trucked in from an approved upland source and planted with Cape American beach grass, 18 inches on center as depicted on the project plan prepared by EN Consultants dated May 7, 2024. And whereas a public hearing was duly held on the 26th day of August, 2024, for all interested persons to be heard in favor of or in opposition, now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to NYCRR 617.5 C2, this application is deemed a type 2 action. Reasons supporting this determination: the proposed construction will not cause an obstruction into navigable channels or an interference with navigation, will not adversely affect the public's right to use town waters or land under town waters, will not adversely affect shellfishing grounds or other aquatic wildlife which may exist in the immediate area, will not adversely affect the quality of the tidal water, shoreline, or beaches, will not adversely affect the rights of adjacent residents. And be it further resolved that the town clerk is hereby authorized to issue a permit for the aforementioned construction as per specifications filed after said applicant pursuant to section 43-D of the Code of the Town of Shelter Island has filed with the town clerk an insurance on the location and operations covered by said permit, a copy of the contract, current homeowners improvement contractor's license, and a certificate from the contractor performing the operations covered by said permit that said contractor has an owner's contractor's policy issued in favor of the town of Shelter Island for the liability limits of at least $500,000 covering operations of the contractor pursuant to said permits. And be it further resolved that said operations will be completed within 1 year from the date of issuance of this permit. Said permit is subject to the recommended limitations and any requirements that may be necessary under the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, the Army Corps of Engineers, and any other agencies having jurisdiction. So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. That is all of the business for this evening. I'll entertain a motion to close the meeting. Second.
Third.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.